Subtle skills, big results.
Welcome to the Ninja Selling Podcast. Welcome back to the Ninja Selling Podcast and another Ninja coaching spotlight that we're going to put together here. I am overly excited today because today we get to bring to you Michael Doyle. I refer to him as Mike Doyle. Many of you out there who know Mike are going to call him Michael because that is his proper name that he goes by in the real estate world. Mike and I have been friends for many, many, many years. And in doing these spotlights, Mike's story is one that I've wanted to have shared for many, many, many years because I think we're going on 17 years of working with each other with business and real estate and Ninja. When we came time to do this, I told Matt, I said, Matt, I need you to do the interview because if we're going to do this justice, and I don't want to get stuck in the weeds with Mike, which we could very easily do. I need somebody who's a third party here to be able to manage this and to be able to go through the important parts that I know all of you want to hear and learn from and listen to, because the feedback that we're getting about these spotlights is that this takes the fear out of coaching. It helps people understand what this journey might look like for others. And it also, from what I'm hearing from all the listeners, is that this is a great place to understand that we're all on a journey. We're all growing in our businesses and in our lives. And sometimes it's easy to look at somebody who's at the upper echelons and go, man, how did they ever do it? And it's years of work and focus and having a path and having a direction. And again, super excited. So Mike Doyle, thank you so much. Welcome today. Matt, also welcome. But Mike, thank you and good morning.
Thanks, Garrett. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Dude, it's gonna be great. So Matt, I'm gonna toss this to you right now. I'm gonna jump in where I can jump in and throw ideas where I have them along the way. But again, let's get this thing rolling, man.
Yeah, this is great. Well, I'm going to call Mike as well, because that's how I know you from all the stories that Garrett have shared with me.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because I feel like we're already friends, even though we've only spoken basically twice before getting to do this, which is a lovely thing. And I think
it's good, man. It's good. Yeah, my friends call me whatever they want to. It's great.
All right, whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, whatever.
Absolutely.
Just kidding. So Mike, let's start right at the beginning, because I think a lot of people who are listening maybe don't know that the Ninja installation it's over a decade old, but it's still relatively new in terms of what Ninja is. And you discovered Ninja before there was an installation. You met Garrett before there was an installation.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just start by, if you could share a little bit about how you got introduced to Ninja and what that was like and kind of what was going on in your world, because you shared with me before this that there was a decision you had to make about either staying in the business or going and doing something else. So just share that kind of Ninja intro and how you got started there.
Yeah, great. Well, I feel like it was the recession at that time. So if I do the math on 17 years, maybe that's just about right. I know that it was a cold, rainy day in Seattle. That happens here a bit, at a building that I'm pretty sure has been torn down to make way for an expanded freeway. And yes, it was on installation. It was Walt and Garrett in a 1, maybe 2-day seminar.
Yeah,
definitely no longer than 2 days. And yeah, Matt, the decision, the point at that point really was, should I keep doing this? I'd gotten into the business and, things were good. It was at the sort of tail end of that boom, I guess I'll say. And, I'd been able to survive, for lack of a better way to put it, on, as a new broker. And I was still relatively new, but, things were changing quickly. And I wondered if I should get back into some sort of technology sales. Now, I didn't really want to. I knew that. I knew that my heart wasn't in it, but I worried about making enough money to, to have have the income that I wanted to have. So, I don't remember exactly how how it came in my world. I'm sure I know that it was a Windermere thing. And I decided to go, and one of those moments where at the end or after day one, I think I went up and spoke with Walt and told him I'd be interested in coaching, and he said, "That's nice, kid. Talk to Garrett." and
that sounds like my dad.
yeah. So anyway, that's I think in the middle of those 2 days, didn't we go? Wasn't that when we went to Dragonfish, Garrett?
No, I came up to visit you. We were up doing an actual installation is where we were. I remember we were at the Seattle Center doing an installation.
That's right.
And I got a hold of you, and I still remember running through the streets of Seattle with you. So yeah, that was a different night.
Yeah. 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 So I don't know, Matt, I think I got off topic, but that was the basic context. I really wasn't sure that I could make it, for lack of a better way to put it. It wasn't that I didn't want to, but it felt hard. It was hard.
Well, so what were the things, you're doing this like 2-day class with Walt Fry,
Yeah.
Garrett's dad, and something must have been said that you were like, all right, I got to give this one more shot before I decide to go back and kind of fall onto plan B here. I got to give him one more shot. Was there a particular, was this your first experience and exposure to Ninja, I guess is my
Yes.
first question. And then was there something particular about the system or the culture of Ninja that gave you that inspiration and courage to say, hey, let me give it a shot and work with Garrett and see if he can help pull me out of this?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Matt, with the word culture. I don't remember a specific thing. I remember a general feeling of relief that, there's an entire group of people that are interested in who are interested in doing this in a way that's not cheesy and in a way that really resonates with the way that I feel about it, which is that this should be done with the client's best interest in mind, with an acknowledgement that we're here to survive, here to pay the bills and make a living, but we're doing this on their terms.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to put it. So for me, it was just that overall feeling of like, wow, I'm not the only one who, and obviously there are other people in my world who were good brokers and coming from the right place, but it was nice to feel that there was a community that felt this way. Does that make sense?
Definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So Garrett, let me ask you, because Mike comes into your world, this is 07, 08, kind of how I'm doing the math in my head here. And Mike's saying, hey, I'm thinking about leaving the industry. Can you help me? Like, what did the beginning of that coaching relationship look like on your end when Mike came, and what was the energy that was there that maybe in those first year or two you saw transform?
What's interesting is you start working with anybody, we start looking at like, where are they trying to go? And do they have a dream of what they want this to look like? And Mike had two dreams. One was he knew how to do tech sales, but you could get it. And it was a lot of our coaching calls, Mike, that would come back around on, that you would be like, I'm thinking about maybe just throwing in the towel and go in that direction. And we kept kind of trying to refocus and going, where does this really take you? And what does this look like? My number one goal up front, and this is with Mike or with anybody who's in that kind of transition period, is like, can you get them to see the vision of what this could be and where we could be going with this real estate career? And for some people, it's hard for them to believe up front what it could be, because it's out of their realm of what they've created in the past, what they've seen, what they've done. And I remember very early on that was a big part of coaching Mike. And Mike, you're one of the most coachable people I've ever been around. Like, you are open to ideas, but you're also one that in a lot of our coaching calls over the years will say to me, yeah, Garrett, I don't agree with what you just said, which not everybody will do, but it's been a very healthy point of our relationship and coaching together, is that you don't necessarily believe every idea I've got and everything that I'm bringing to the table and every breakdown of what I think is happening in the marketplace right now. And I think as we've grown as a coach and coachee, that's been very healthy communication for both of us, because none of us has taken the other one as they've got all the answers or they've seen this market or they understand it exactly the way that it is. Just like I try to get you to go, yeah, I don't believe you when you look at your business that way. You'll do right the same back to me. And that's, I think, been a really good thing.
Yeah, I've gotten better at it, Garrett. I've learned to say, now I understand that what I focus on expands, but that looks like a really big train headed my way.
And that is expanding into my field of view very, very fast.
Yeah, exactly.
So those first years, right? I mean, very tough economic situation going on across the country, very tough housing market.
Hey, wait, are you talking about right now?
Oh, wait a minute.
Sorry, go ahead.
Like you're looking at like, hey, I gotta pay bills. I gotta do these things. But obviously you stuck with it because you're here today, right? Was there a point in those first few years where you were like, okay, I totally get it now. Like, I don't need to think about tech sales anymore. I'm ready.
Oh no. I'll let you know when I totally get it.
Well, and you had mentioned that when we talked on the phone yesterday, you had said, hey, the imposter syndrome, right? Like it's always there, right? But I guess there's just a different level of how you let that impact what you're going to do in terms of the actions that will produce results for you. So when did you start to dial in like a routine, let's just say, like where you were like, okay, these ninja habits, these are starting to work for me. I'm fully committed. Like this is really going to work.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll say I can't speak to that answer. And I'll say that I've gone in and out of routine. I recently reestablished a morning routine, which is, essentially get up early, grab a cup of coffee, sit and reflect in silence, sometimes with a self-improvement book, gratitudes, etc. But I don't remember, Matt, the first time that I got into a routine.
Well, I imagine in the early years, it was just the routine was, I need to do some of these actions, right? I need to get in flow.
Yeah, exactly. I got, pages and pages of written out gratitudes that I, started doing when I don't really know.
Garrett, did you see a difference in his?
Can I answer a different question?
Well, let me toss it to Garrett. Garrett, when did you see that change? Because and we can maybe even talk some numbers, because I'm sure, at a certain point we're like, hey, I'm finally selling this much real estate. Like this is now working.
So numbers wise, Mike has seen an incredible growth with his business, whether Mike is like, I'm satisfied with where I'm at, or I have way bigger growth that I still want to get to. Over the years, Mike has had an amazing growth in his business, which we can get into if you guys want to go down that route.
As he shakes his head saying like, never satisfied. I love that, by the way.
The interesting thing is that I will say, Mike, you've never been a perfect ninja. And I think it's a really healthy thing to understand that a lot of people look at my success with ninja as being a perfect ninja. And one of the things that I've always been impressed about you is that you don't do anything unless it's authentic. I have beat on Mike to make phone calls over the years. And Mike's like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. And I've had to break that down and break it down and break it down to go like, dude, what doesn't feel right about it? And you're like, I was just thinking about you when I wasn't really just thinking about you. Like, I remember you saying that over and over again and going like, I'm not making that phone call unless I'm really actually thinking about them. And we've had to get creative over the years of like, so how can you pull the car over in that moment and make that phone call in real time? So I'll get you to make your phone calls. Like instead of making a list and calling them later in the week, because you're like, that's not authentic. I think that you've always worked at having a routine. And I think for all of us as real estate agents and people that end up in this industry, we don't always work in that way of that being that structured. It's what's got us here. And I think you're a prime example of someone that's done a really good job of creating somewhat of a routine and sticking to it as long as it can feel authentic and genuine, which is what's made you have such a great impact with your people. It's because it's always authentic and genuine. It's never a check the box ever.
Yes. Well, and how about if we really value it, if we really value the flow for what it is, right? Which I'll say is, yeah, sure. Sometimes it results in some real estate deals, but it's this like interstitial humanity. Maybe it's worth pulling over every time and going, hey, Bob, man, I was just thinking about you.
Well, Mike, you said your superpower when it comes to ninja systems overall. And I want to talk about how you manage creating the flow that you do, right? You said your superpower is making it not about you and believing in your heart that it really is about the other person. So can you you touched on it there, that the whole point of flow is that, humanity aspect. So can you expand on how you view that and how that motivates you to then connect with people, even though obviously the phone calls are elusive?
Yeah, I think I can. I'm hung up though, Matt. I'm hung up on the word superpower because again, back to imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know. what, who are we interviewing here? Yeah. So I'll say that maybe I can address that a slightly different way.
Sure.
And say that what I think I have gotten most from Ninja and from Garrett is mindset. That I'll say it this way, without mindset, it's all built on a foundation of mindset, right? And without that, it just doesn't go, right? I mean, you can write all the gratitudes you want, you can make all the phone calls you want, you can send all the handwritten notes, but if you don't pour the right energy into all that stuff, it just doesn't work, right? So I think, Matt, to get back to the great trait or the superpower of authenticity and about, I don't know, what's a good word for it, about making it about the people. I've kind of had this mantra for a long time that it's about the people. It's not really something I think about. It's just there. It's just there. And it, as opposed to being something I think about, it's maybe something that I can lean back on and go back into a place of comfort when I'm sort of checking a decision and go like, well, yeah, but yes, this is correct because it is about them. So just do that. If your gut is telling you to do that, even though it seems like maybe not the right thing for the business, but that's what you should do. So to do it.
And has that always been something that you had, like a quality or a skill that you've always had, or is that something that you've developed over time?
I've been able to, if you use the sort of archaeologist metaphor, like I've been able to dust it off and find it. I think it's always been there, but I've been able to get more clarity, as I have through the Ninja program and on the Ninja path, been emboldened to look for mindset, authenticity, pick whatever word you want.
Yeah.
And been encouraged to hold that as something that's vital and true and important versus, hey, here's this program where you have to, do X, Y, and Z.
And I think to jump in on the mindset here just really quick is that, again, I think it's one of those misnomers that a lot of people think that, oh, you get this great mindset and you're done. Like that's like your foundation's built and you're going. And, with every given market and every different situation and maybe even a client you get to work with, like your mindset can get torn down. And I know we've done a lot of work over the years where you've been going one route and I got to kind of come back over this direction. Like, let's look at this from a different angle. Let's get a different perspective on this. Let's talk this out for a second. Then all of a sudden you're like, all right, we're good. And you can keep going. And I think a lot of people don't realize that of having somebody in your world that you can bounce those kinds of ideas off to check your mindset. Because our minds can run in wild, crazy directions sometimes and get the best of us. We're all built that way. I know we've done a lot of work with that over the years of kind of wrangling in mindset and bringing it back.
Yeah, Garrett, that's right. And I'll excitedly, obviously, say that I think that for me, a critical piece of this was to, if we get down to nuts and bolts, to figure out what I needed to do in my physical world to get there. Right. So, for me, if I start the day feeling behind, the whole thing's blown out. I'm guessing there are people who can start the day feeling behind and it's fine within 15, 20, 30 minutes. But for me, if I start the day behind, it's not good. Right. So, it took, I don't know, a decade or so to figure out that, all right, look, if I want to start the day level or ahead, that means I need to get up early and I need to sit and reflect and do these things. And if I'm going to do that, well, what does that mean for the night before? Well, for the night before, that means I need to not put X, Y, or Z into my body and go to bed. Right. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that, but I think that I guess I wanted to get to a real world example here of kind of, how it all works, right?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, let's kind of follow that path for a second. We'll come back to
sure.
I'm sure everybody wants to know, like, well, how does Mike Doyle do the tactics and strategies and all that stuff? And we're going to talk about that. But I think there's also a big element here of getting your life together. You mentioned to me that hey, if it wasn't for Garrett helping me also on the personal side of things and getting that, the real estate business wouldn't be where it is. So, share with us a little bit about how did that come into coaching for you? When you started this relationship with Garrett, I'm sure initially you're like, hey, I want to get this real estate thing going, give it an extra shot. At what point did all of a sudden, the personal life and getting that organized for yourself come into play?
So, I mean, I'll say this is probably true for most people, but it's all connected, right? Your work life and your personal life, and your success at home is related to your success at the office, et cetera. Maybe I was a bit more sideways than most people.
No, you weren't, but keep going.
I don't know. It's possible though. Yeah. So, what I had to figure out in my life was, was I going to marry the person or be forever with the person that I was with? And was I going to have kids? And what did that look like? And, I had what I will call baggage from my childhood about marriage and the possibility of divorce and all that. So, for me, this comfort, I guess, in doing this business in a way that was genuine, using a system that is, really call it a lifestyle system, a mindset system, not lifestyle in the sense of board shorts and flip flops, but I'll say important to one's holistic life. I really had to address that part of it too. I couldn't focus as well then as I could now on doing the things that I need to do to be there for my clients, because I had a whole part of my life that wasn't solved, that had a bunch of question marks in it. So, I don't think we were recording at the time, but earlier in this call, we were discussing Garrett's son, Otto, at my wedding as an 8-year-old?
He might have been younger than that. He might have been 6, but keep going.
Yeah. 7.
We're close.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So, it wasn't a question to me as to whether I would invite Garrett and Sarah and the kids to my wedding. It just made a bunch of sense because I felt like I was largely there at that point in my life due to the work we'd done together. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that brings us to, pick the right coach, right? If you don't have somebody that you feel that way about or can feel that way about, then maybe you're not in the right spot.
Good point.
Because it is I have gotten Garrett to the point where he has said, "Hey, look, I'm not a psychologist, but it is that intimate a thing that that level of comfort is important." And I totally forgot what the question was, but.
I think what I'd like to add into this is that it's very easy for people to make coaching mechanical. And I know all of our coaches have experienced it where, we get into working on the business and we start asking questions about, what does your life look like outside of this business? And we've had coaching clients that will flat out say, that's not why I'm hiring you. I'm hiring you for the mechanics part of the business.
I want performance, and that's it.
That's it. Like, don't talk to me about my kids. Don't talk to me about my hobbies. Don't talk to me about this is what I need. And I find the most healthy coaching relationships that I've had. And Mike, we've coached for literally, I think 17 years. We have a lot of people that I've coached in the 10 plus range. And I look at what has made those relationships go that long is that it's not just the mechanics of how do you do a listing presentation and how do you show up for a buyer and how to hire a professional photographer. Like, we do get into all the nuts and bolts and all the moving pieces of these worlds that you all have. Dude, I have you documented for weeks for 17 years. I got notes. I know a lot about you, man.
Yeah, I know it. But perhaps more than I know myself. If I may jump in though, I think that this is a critical thing when we're talking about coaching real estate brokers. Because we are in a role that, as much as we might be challenged by, the emotional pulls of it with our clients, that is there, and we can go in and say, "Hey, look, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just here to sell your house." But, we are ignoring, if we do that, a large part of what is really going on. Right. And so I just think there's a super interesting parallel there. That it would make sense, I think, that a real estate broker would be able to talk about more than just the mechanics of how high can I jump, how fast can I run with their coach, because the work we do is so intimate.
Particularly when you're looking to create a lifestyle with Ninja in general, right? Goal is increase your income per hour so you can have a life, right? And
yeah.
I don't know a single person who doesn't have in somewhere in their reasons for getting into real estate that they want a different type of lifestyle, that they want control over their time, right? And so when it comes into performance coaching for real estate, that has to be on the table, right? And for you, Mike, that was a pivotal point for you too, right? I mean, did you see your business then as, hey, I'm going to settle down, going to get married, going to have kids? Like, was that a inflection point then for your business as well?
Probably. I don't know. We have to be better than I am at tracking performance at all.
Well, I'm sure Garrett probably knows some of those notes.
I got notes.
Yeah. And then overlaying it. Well, I'll say this, Matt. I mean, I certainly, as my personal life got settled, which seems like the wrong word because it can mean compromise, but as my personal life was established in a better way, it certainly got easier for me to think about, what I wanted to do professionally, and made it a whole lot easier when I wasn't thinking about, these discussions with Holly about what does the future hold and questions about kids. When all that was settled, it certainly gave me more brain space to, think about how to show up for other people.
Well, if you look at the trajectory of living in a loft downtown with Holly to bringing a baby into that loft, I clearly remember being on coaching calls with you when you were like, dude, I am trying to do my systems, but I am in a loft in downtown Seattle. I got a crying baby in the next room. Like, I'm barely here on this call with you right now.
Yeah.
And I think, those are all real life situations as we're trying to grow and be the best we can be. And I've told people forever, there is no better incentive than being responsible for somebody else. You bring a spouse into the world, your responsibility goes up even more because you're not just worried about yourself. Now you're worried about making the best for you and this other person that you truly care about and love. And then you bring children into the world and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's the whole game has gotten even more real. And now we need to show up and we need to do this at a different level and grow and provide a life for these guys. And I think that's where it's kind of inevitable as you grow over this time. I mean, we could probably go back and label it right down to when you were like, okay, I got to take this serious. Like, I got to really show up and do this the right way. So I think it would probably correlate pretty evenly.
Yeah, probably. I just, as you were saying that, Garrett, I was obviously not 100% listening because I thought, what about the leap of faith that both of these paths require, right? Both in turn, the marriage or long-term partnership and family path, and I don't know, staring into maybe not a great real estate economy and just deciding that we are going to keep our mindset, do our systems, and that the universe will provide, right? There's an analogy there.
Oh, definitely.
There's an analogy around, but there's also the fundamental of success leaves clues. And I think if you look at a successful business, you can look at a business and see why one failed or why it succeeded after the fact and go like, well, it makes total sense.
Right.
You can look at a marriage and go, okay, well, understand why did it fail or why did it succeed? It makes total sense when you can look back on it. And I think there are just fundamental underlying pieces that are like, we got a pretty good shot that we're going to have success with this journey that we're about to, venture into. Hopefully we go into all of our future endeavors with we got a pretty good chance of success here. Otherwise, if you're going into it going like, yeah, we got a 90% chance this is going to blow up, let's go for it. Like, yeah.
So you're saying there's a chance. Well, Mike, let's lean into the faith a little bit there because I'm curious in your development of that, right? Because there's a lot of scarcity in this industry. A lot of people come into it saying, like, gosh, I need that next paycheck. Otherwise, these bad things are going to happen. And they're really surviving baseline from scarcity, right? Like the focus is so hard on that they're just keeping their head above water.
Yeah.
And when you talked about mindset earlier in this episode, clearly you have developed a very resilient perspective and abundance mindset, and so how did you develop that faith to say, hey, things are going to work out? I don't know how, but I believe that this is going to work. I believe in my business and I believe in myself. How did that develop for you?
I don't know. I don't know. It just happened.
Was there a point where you didn't have that faith?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Matt. And, I mean, look, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that there are little voices every now and again that go, hey, man, wait a second. Wait a second.
Of course.
I was thinking recently about how several months ago, Holly and I bought a different second home, and we borrowed a huge chunk of money. And I said, I'll use the sum. I said, hey, that's cool. I'll just go out and make another $500,000. It's going to be fine. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I said, I'll just go make it. It'll be okay. So, that doesn't answer your question, but where does that come from? I don't know. I mean, I think it comes from getting myself in the place where I needed to be with mindset, to where I feel in control. How about that? That's it. It's control, right? It's me waking up in the morning, feeling good, popping out of bed, just being thankful to be alive, making my cup of coffee. It's funny. I'm picturing it as I do it. Make my cup of coffee, grab my book about health, sit down, read my book about health, sip my coffee, close the book, do my affirmations, think about people I really care about and love, think about my team members, and go from there. Right. So I guess the faith comes from the grounding, maybe.
I love that. I've always said faith and action go together to build this strong, belief system that we have, because you can say, I believe something, but what do your actions say about that? And you've developed that correlation. Garrett, have you, at the beginning, I have a feeling that maybe these two things weren't as well connected as they are now for Mike. So can you share that perspective from your end?
Well, Mike, what you just said, and I definitely will go down to answer your question directly, Matt, but what you just said about having control and having that mindset of, I'll just go make $500,000. We'll make that happen. That'll offset this. We'll be great. Where there's a lot of realtors, there's a lot of business professionals that don't have that they haven't created that for themselves yet to be able to say that. And I was kind of trying to rip it back down to, there's certain things we learn in our life. There's a certain point in our life where we don't know how to make breakfast for ourselves, let alone make breakfast for others. To create a breakfast. But at some point, any one of us sitting here on the phone on this call right now can very easily go what, you want breakfast? I'll make breakfast. I'm going to go do that. I know exactly what to get. And hey, if the stuff isn't here, I'm going to run down to the store and I'm going to buy it. And you guys are all going to sit back saying, hey, thanks for making breakfast. We know the control, and we know that we have the control, and we know the pieces that make that work. It's just ingredients that make the final outcome that we want. When you understand the ingredients and you understand how that process works, it's very easy to be we'll just go make another $500,000. We'll just go do it. And I think that's where you got to the simplicity side of making breakfast. But for you, that's really what you now understand about how you work, the relationships you have, the understanding of real estate, the professionalism that you bring into the Seattle marketplace. That's not I hope I'm going to make another 500,000. It's just let's just go create it. Just like one of us creating breakfast. So you weren't always that way. I mean, then that's something that you've grown into. Again, we've been in this long enough together that I remember the times of how are we going to hit certain numbers and how are we going to grow? And there was a certain place way back when we're making 500 in a year wasn't exactly something that you believed that you could do.
Yeah.
And you are one now. I have a joke that I say about a handful of people that I coach, which is all they got to do is dip their toe in the water and all the fish jump. And I've said it about Mike before, is that, I'll just embrace the systems right now. If you're feeling a little bit of scarcity, a little bit of lack, lean into the systems, because all you got to do is dip your toe in the pond and all the fish are going to jump. And that's the way it's always been.
Yeah. May I jump in on something?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about how, obviously that is a huge sum of money, and I'm in a super lucky place to even be able to say that. Right. And there's this thing that happens, and with a lot of people, I think, and did happen with me for a long time, that feels like taking from, right? To be able to say that I can go get that. And how do I reconcile that with the fact that I really care about all these people in my world? And so I'd say, Matt, I don't know when this happened, but when you ask about sort of, you said it in a different way, but when things click and fall into place, I know, I was going to say I firmly believe, but I know that me going out and showing up for people results in money landing around me, and that both of those things are good, right? It's not a taking from. It's you know what? It's showing up and being there in order to help, and that everybody gets value from that. That really, it's just like it's the result of engagement.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I could otherwise not engage, and I wouldn't have those things, and I wouldn't be giving my expertise and my heart and my services to my people. They would go find that elsewhere. But these two things can and do work together, and that's a good thing.
I don't know if you still do this, but I remember early on, when I say early on, let's go back 10 years ago. I remember written into your business plan and something you're like, I want to do this every year going forward. You're like, I just want to do one deal pro bono. There's people out there that need my help, that need my service. Sometimes there's deals that come together that are difficult. And you're like, it's not about the money. The money will all fix itself. But I would love to be able to take a piece of it out of the equation and just be there to help somebody sometimes.
Yeah.
And I always admired that about you. I don't have, out of all the people I've ever coached, you're the only one that's even thrown that on the table of like, let's just make that part of our business. And you did it for a couple of years. I remember you talking about like, yeah, I just took care of that deal for somebody. It's okay. Like it's done. And you were really genuinely excited about getting to help somebody. And I think, again, it's not, I think that really explains the difference of gathering money and taking money out there. And I'm going to, get this money from people to like, it's really a gift that's given to me from me providing great service and helping people and taking care of them. It just comes into my world. I think it's a really great place to look at it from.
Yeah.
I like that. Since we're on that, let's kind of talk about some of these systems then as well, right? Because for those listening, Mike, you're now, gross commissions well over 7 figures, right? You've grown to a really awesome place. And I want to talk about some of the things that you do regularly to get you there. We know that phone calls isn't really one of them, right?
Right.
We try so hard.
We try. But we do a lot of other things that lead to in-person actions, because I think a lot of people correlate phone calls with Ford conversations. And Ford conversations can happen everywhere. Mike, you love to do them in person.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you deploy in your system to make sure that you are creating these circumstances where you get to have conversations so you can meet people in person and all of that stuff?
Yeah. You nailed it, Matt. For me, it's really about face-to-face Ford. And the way that I try to think about it is just finding ways and places to be physically present. So, what did I do last year? I think I did 3 holiday parties.
That's what I was just going to say. How many holiday parties did you do? Keep going.
Yeah. There's either 3 or 4. And they weren't massive, they were each about 40, maybe 50 people, which I have also figured this out, that 100-person party is hard for me. It's challenging because I don't get to say hello to 100 people in a 100-person party, but I get to say hello to 40 or 50, and I get to find out a little bit about what's going on with most of them in that scenario. So, I figured out maybe a couple of years ago, but at least did it last year, that, breaking it up was a good thing. Now sitting in an office in South Lake Union in Seattle, which has pretty good concentration of people that I know and might run into when I'm headed out for lunch, let alone, having scheduled lunch with somebody a block or 2 away. I thought about this yesterday in the gym. I mean, this is one of the crazy things about this role. I went to the gym midday yesterday because I hadn't done it in the morning for various reasons, and I wanted to get it done. And it was 2 or maybe 3 people in my sphere that I ran into and had a quick chat with, and really just got a spark of energy from. So yeah, for me, it's all about, it all points towards how do we get together?
You've created an environment where you've created your physical environment to put those opportunities out there, it sounds like, right? Like being in downtown Seattle, going to the gym, facilitating events,
walking my kids to school, being able to show up at soccer practice and to be there with my kid, whichever kid's going that particular day, having engineered my life to allow that to happen quite a bit, which I guess gets us into the building of a team conversation. But yeah, for me, it's all about what am I doing that optimizes for that. And it's a now well-known secret. I don't make all the Ford calls that are prescribed, but I have figured out that, hey, if somebody, if this person pops into my head, Like, while I can feel that energy, while I can feel the glow of those previous interactions and really feel good and stoked to be able to just go, hey, Warren, what's up, man? I got nothing except for I wanted to say hi. How you doing? Then I do that.
When you'd mentioned to me too before that, you also utilize your other communication methods, text message and all these things to kind of pull out, because these environmental instances, you could run into anybody, there's group settings, but getting down to one-on-one, you do use your text messaging and other things to kind of stoke also some of those one-to-one conversations, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I try to, the words didn't come out because they didn't feel right, but I was going to say, I try to turn those into meeting up with people. Yeah. But that's really the best way to put it is what I really want to do is see somebody. I'll say that I'm thankful that I'm in the position that I've got enough people in my world that, anyway, I can't see everybody I want to see. So if I'm making that phone call, I really am interested in that person, right? I really do want to see them. So, I want to turn that into, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee, or when can we do lunch, or you want to go to a hockey game, or, whatever it is.
That's great. So Garrett, share a little bit about like how some of that stuff maybe has developed tactically in how you've been guiding and working with Mike over the years. And also, what are some of the things that go on behind the scenes? Because we haven't really talked about where business comes from. I think, obviously, we're assuming that most of the business is referral, repeat customers, that kind of thing. All of the business, most likely, but obviously, Mike, you probably have the presence now where you're doing a lot of business. You also have just other people who come to you because they know who you are. But Garrett, what are some of the structure that you've seen Mike put into place that's really working, that maybe somebody who's newer in the business or struggling or saying like, man, I wish I could also just go and generate another $500,000, where it's like, well, here you go, do some of this stuff.
Fundamentally up front, Mike brings his heart into the relationship, which is a huge foundation piece of it. And we talked about mindset and having a great mindset, because as much as people think that they can hide what's going on internally, everybody can see right through that. And they decide whether they want to spend more time with that person or maybe distance themselves. And it's even subconscious decisions that are made. It's not a conscious level decision of, why do I not want to spend time around that person? And so I think, with that being taken care of, Mike, I think what you've done really well, and your business is very much relationship based. There's very few times that I even kind of acknowledge, or we've had conversations of you having to work with complete strangers. I find that you generate a lot of business in your own personal relationships. But one thing you've done really well is position yourself as a really knowledgeable source of real estate in the marketplace. And not only position yourself like you are. I think a lot of people go like, what can I create that's going to allow people to think of me as a trusted advisor? And you've gone down the level of like, I am their guru when it comes to real estate. Like, I know all the ins and outs. I know what's going on. I know all the buildings that are being built. I know why they're being built. I know who they're being built for. The deep stuff, as well as like with Matthew Gardner, who Windermere employs as their chief economist for them. I think that's where he's positioned as right now.
Yeah.
You work hand in hand with Matthew to provide special seminars just for your clients to help them understand what's going on in real estate and what's happening out here. And you bring so many facets to the table, as well as we talk about like postcards. I could look at your postcard marketing campaign for I don't know how many years now, and it is like unfazed. Like, it is probably the most consistent marketing campaign I have seen of anybody out there. And for the most part, it's science. You don't do a whole lot of fluffy stuff. You don't do a whole lot of, here's all the list of all the farmers markets downtown that you guys can go to.
Yeah.
Even though you could do here's our favorite family mountain biking trails, and here's the one I was once with my son last week. Like, you totally could do that. Yours is very, very science related of here's a recent sale, here's what it's sold for, here's the stats on that house, and very, very, very consistent. I think it's all those pieces that have led you to being that person that people just go to when they think of real estate.
Yeah, I suppose so. You got me excited about a fluff piece. That's cool. I hadn't thought of that one. I like that. That's going to take the place of spring forward, fall back one of these times.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please replace that one.
Please, dear God, yes.
Yeah. I've never done one of those.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What I want to say is one of the things that really helped in my development and in my confidence, I guess I'll say, is knowing that I was the person to help people, having the confidence that I was prepared, right? Like being able to say, throw me the ball. I got it.
It's a great way to look at it. It's a great way to look at it. Throw me the ball. I got this. Like, not everybody has the confidence to be like, I got this.
Yeah. And it's funny. It reminds me of, I've always graded at the concept of fake it till you make it. Like when I hear somebody say that, I'll say, yeah, burn it till you earn it or something like that, right? But I met somebody recently who said, and I thought it was really good. She said, yeah, okay. For those of you who are starting, fake it till you make it. Don't do that for very long, which is another way of saying, yeah, like build yourself up, do the things you need to do to be sure that you know that you are the right person for the job. If you're not the right person for the job, the way that I started thinking about this recently, and I think it was in that presentation, if you're not the right person for the job, bring somebody else in who is, bring them in as part of the team, but become the right person for the job.
Put the work in practice, right? So that when you show up on the game field, you're ready to play.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like, Mike, you do a good amount of like research behind the scenes. Gary, you mentioned knowing the buildings, the developers, all this stuff, like what's going on, so you can share that information with your people. I mean, how much of your time is spent just kind of absorbing and learning information so that you can be that expert?
Gosh, yeah, I don't know. I would say 15 to 20% of my time is in networking, discussions with other brokers, just listening to what people have to say about what's going on, both in terms of deals that are coming and going and, buildings downtown.
It's funny, Mike, because you were on the think tank that we just recently did. And one of the number one conversations that came up where we were talking about being a pricing expert and understanding how to do that. It was funny. All the panelists came down to like getting out there, understand what's going on, being connected, asking questions, following properties. And I think you look at like your database. I mean, you could say 15 to 20% of the time, but I also think like that's who you've built your database around also, is this natural group of people that, whether it's a conscious, I need to go spend time to go understand the marketplace, or if it's I just understand the marketplace because of who I hang around. I feel like you've got a really tight social network that I've watched you build over the years that just allows you to be an expert because of the conversations that you're going out and doing and having.
Yeah. And one of the super cool things that's happened too is that, as my business has grown and I've built my team, I've always got stuff going on and essentially all over town. So, I feel like I'm also just within the scope of our business. I'm able to look at it and say, yeah, okay, like this is a theme that we're seeing across the neighborhoods and across price points.
I mean, I think that's building that in though to your lifestyle, so to speak. I mean, I think that kind of points to that, as if you build your business around your lifestyle, then you're going to have those interactions, and it's not necessarily as like, so, I think a lot of the answers, people are like, well, how does he not know the specifics behind this, and this? And it's like, well, because Mike, you've done such a great job of weaving everything together that now at this point, your environment just kind of helps you follow these quote habits of learning about what's going on, being in flow with people, which then lead to the opportunities where I'm sure you have this specific of like, hey, I got to do my customer service calls. Here's some people I need to follow up with to learn more about pain or pleasure, hot list, warm list, those things. But you allow the environment you've built and the lifestyle to feed all that, which I think is really, you think about how we want to live with this business long term, it's a great way to do it. So kudos to you for putting that together so that is what exists for you.
Thank you. Yeah, Matt, when you say, you use the example, how does he not know this? I'll say that, well, there's a greater theme here, but specifically, one of the things that I was really happy to figure out is that it's okay to not have every statistic, right? It's okay to not know every angle of one's business. For instance, this is the specific, I don't know, it's probably 10 or 15 years ago that when in an interview, in a listing presentation, when a potential seller would say, well, what's your sales price to list price ratio? I was able to say, I don't know. And here's why that doesn't matter. Because, if all I was doing was out trying to take listings at the lowest possible price in order to build that buffer, right? In order to prove that I could sell above the list price, if that was my game, then I'd be able to tell you that's not my game. My game is to do this in the way that feels best for you, from a pricing perspective, that is. So I think that's interesting. I also want to do a quick, run a quick tangent, if I may, and say that reminds me of this sort of theme I think that Greg McKeown is on right now. Greg McKeown of Effortless and Essentialism.
Mm-hmm.
I was really geeking out on it yesterday when I was in the gym listening to his podcast, but about separating the vital few from the many, about the pursuit of clarity around noise. And was just thinking about how important that is to get our brains in a place. And then again, this brings me back to my quiet mornings, but to get our brains in a place where we can actually think in this world of tidal waves of information and noise. Anyway, it's something I'm interested in right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Well, so let's talk a little bit about, it will kind of like start to move into just a little bit about growth. Maybe Garrett, how you've helped Mike with this team building, because it's a unique structure in a way. And then also just kind of some of the key points about consistency and showing up and the longevity of this relationship the two of you had. So at what point, Mike, did you look at and say, okay, if I really want to grow this thing, I need some help here? And I'm sure that was not a just one session discussion with Garrett on figuring that one out, right?
I think we're still having it, Mike, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Garrett.
Well, so Garrett, do you want to stoke that a little bit and just kind of share, like, what were you seeing in Mike's business where you're like, hey, have you ever thought about like a TC or an assistant or something like that?
So, and Matt, you can contest to this too, is that we always watch it with people as we're watching them grow their businesses. There's a certain place that they get to a spot where there is not enough time to handle all the business that they've created. And then what happens is then now you get into a place of either providing less service or working with less people. And Mike got into that space here, and I don't remember what year it was, but it was a long time ago, because I remember we started having the discussions of, we need to define what the rules of your game are, of who you work with and what that is. And you put a very specific price point on it. That's how we kind of started to go down this route of like, well, what if we just said at $1 million, that's a breaking point. Anything above that, I'm going to take and I'm going to run with and I'm going to work with. Anything below that, we're going to refer out. And we're trying to decide what was the best way of doing that. Is it actually building a team of people underneath you that we're going to basically have be, working employees almost underneath you?
Yep.
Or is it creating these referral relationships? And I had learned this from a couple of different agents that I had coached that had worked with it, but I would say didn't take it kind of the level that you've taken it at, where it's really become an integral part of your business. Of, you've got 3 people, I believe, right now that you're like, I can just go like hand this stuff off. You've got a great working relationship that you can walk away and say, okay, they've got that taken care of. And it's taken a long time to get there. That wasn't an overnight flick the switch. Because to the audience, Mike is somebody that cares about his clients so much that the hint of it's not going to be right for the client makes him go, I can't have anybody else touch it. And it's been one of the things I think a lot of us, as growing our business and entrepreneurs and taking ownership of things, have a hard time sometimes letting go of the reins on that, to know that we've got the right people in the position. And Mike, you have probably been the most resistant to like letting go of certain things and stepping back in. But at the same point, it's also what's made you have the relationships and the trust levels that you have with people. So yeah, Matt, it hasn't been a quick switch, but it's all grown out of necessity. And I think in our coaching relationship, that's the beauty of talking often, is I get to like take his pulse often and go, where are you right now? And there's some days that you are on the verge of having a breakdown of energy, negative energy coming out of you of like, this isn't working, to like other times when we get on calls and you're like, oh my gosh, I saw a glimpse today and I can see how this is going to work and it's going to be awesome. And those are those ones that we lean into those glimpses and try to go, okay, let's create more of that. And then there's the ones that's like, this isn't working. Then it's like, we need to fix that quickly, come up with a new plan, new direction, new system around it potentially. And I think that's how we've kind of handled it over the years, is just constantly doing this checking of pulse and bobbing and weaving and figuring out new plans, because it's not cookie cutter of like, oh, we this is how ninjas do it across the United States. It's very much, how are we going to make this work in your business and that's successful for you?
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it answered my question. And so, Mike, what does that look like today then, right? Because you don't have the traditional, quote, team structure, so to speak. I mean, maybe on the outside it looks like that, but, what does your organization look like?
Yeah, I'll get there, man. But as you become accustomed to in this call, I'm going to go somewhere else first.
No problem at all.
It's funny, Garrett, to hear you talk about that and about our coaching. Number one, I want to resist and say, I'm never close to breaking down. What the?
It's not energy.
but yes, it's that. And when I think about it, I'm really glad we're having this discussion because that tends to happen when I compromise my ability to take the leap of faith and say, you know what, in my heart, I know that I should bring Mark or Harold or Todd or Kat or whoever it is in to help me on this deal. I'm just going to do it myself. And then I realize when it's, I want to say too late, but when it's a lot harder to bring somebody else in, then all of a sudden, because I've done that in a few different places and the concurrent fire drills have all landed at the same time, where I'm like, man, this is too much and it doesn't feel right. I've been working so much that now my morning routine is off. So, I feel like it breaks down when I don't remember to have that confidence in the team and in just the leap of faith that it works. So that's an interesting observation and realization for me on this in this discussion.
And real quick before you go on, when we talk about that energy, Mike, of where you get to that, like, as I said, like things aren't working. If anybody's picked up on Mike's energy, a racing pulse for Mike is when I call Mike and I say, Mike, how's it going? And you go, Garrett, to be honest, it's not great. It's not great right now. And that for me is like, uh-oh. Like,
yeah, I don't know what to say to that. Sorry. Yeah. So Matt, how it started was, it's funny. I always think of this example and I think it actually happened, but it's been so long ago now. But I have in my mind that I needed to deliver a key to an office. I think I had a listing, had to deliver a key so that the broker for the buyer could take that key and give it to the buyer. And concurrent with that, I was trying to get a deal done for a buyer client of mine in a multiple offer situation, and really could have stood to focus on that, to even just sit in a dark room and think about, okay, what angle have I not tried? Should I be calling that other broker right now, or should I give them 15 minutes? Should I send an email? If I do, what should that say? I had, on the one hand, this really important mission critical stuff that had to happen. And on the other hand, a silly mechanical, thing that a courier could do. Right. So I remember thinking to myself, I should hire a courier. Well, it's too late to hire a courier because the key's got to be there before the office closes in 30 minutes. Right. Okay. Well, then what I really need is somebody whose daily efforts I can direct. Somebody that I can take and say, you know what? Everything else I said before, don't do that. That's tomorrow or later. Right now, please take this key over to that office across town. Right. So it started with something that's simple and then has gone through many steps of, okay, great. Now, not only do I need your relief in this moment, but you are the better person for this job, I think. To where now I have the confidence that, for the things that I have my team do, that they are better positioned to do them than I am. Right. I think about this a lot in house prep. A lot of people aren't accustomed to the concept that they should hire a team. They've had either bad experiences with teams or they just don't think that that's a good idea. They know me and they don't know these other people. And, I've got to be able to communicate to them, hey, look, you really don't want me coordinating these vendors because I'm not the right person for it. I will get frustrated with them. Anyway, it just isn't right. But Harold or Mark or Todd, yeah, like they're really good at that. They should do that. And I'll say the number of things that my team has gotten better at has grown too. And I think that's really interesting too when we think about these teams is not only, well, one of the things that I think about with the team is, hey, I need to be able to grow the value that I provide and what I do for people. So concurrent with that is, shouldn't the people on my team also be able to grow? And if I'm not growing, if I'm continuing to do the same things, I'm not giving them the space to grow. Here's an easy one. If I write the marketing remarks every time and don't give them the chance to take a first draft crack at it, then they never get good at that. Well, now we've gotten to the point where they, I don't know, 75% of the time, I get the marketing remarks in my email and I modify them and I don't start from scratch. And it just happened yesterday that I think I changed 2 words.
Just so you could change 2 words, just because you're like, I need to say I did something here.
Yeah, exactly. Just so I can say, yeah, keep trying.
I think that's great. Well, I think that's awesome, creating that space. I mean, and you mentioned to me too that the agents that work on your team too, they also have growth opportunities. They're not, hamstrung by like, oh, I always owe Mike this, right? Like if they bring in their own stuff, they have the opportunity to grow their own businesses and things as well without worrying about structures and things like that.
Yes.
Even though you all function as a very well-oiled machine. So I think that's great.
Yes. And I realized that you just referred to, and previously I think asked about a little bit more about the structure. And I'll say that, the partner brokers that I bring on, even though with Mark, I think I've been doing it for 14 years or so. That's on he's not a W-2. It's on a deal by deal basis, meaning that if he gets sick of me, he can just stop and he gets to continue to do his own business. And I've found that, that's great in a number of ways for the reasons I just cited, but also I don't have to deal with payroll and all that for more than 2 people. The 2 people on the payroll are me and Paige, my full-time assistant, and everybody else is partner broker. It allows simplicity. It allows for them to do their own businesses. And quite frankly, it's better for my clients because typically the really good brokers, the people who are highly skilled, they don't want to be a W-2 employee on Michael Doyle Properties team. They want to go out and be their own person as well in their own network of people. They just maybe don't have the same business development luck that I have and, are looking for some other work, or they think it's interesting or enjoy the abuse or whatever. But the structure allows us to have what I'll call really good people at every step, every moment of the transaction. I'll just lay out here that we just got a really nice compliment from a client who had previously hired a different team and wasn't satisfied with that. When he and I were having discussions, it was funny. We got to the third call and he said, we've had 3 calls about this and you haven't said you wanted to do it. Do you not want the business? And I said, well, I want it if it's right for you and if it's right for me. And one of the things, is that you have said that you wonder about this team, and I'm not doing it without my team. So his experience with our team versus the other team, in the end, he said, look, I was skeptical about teams because the other team experience I had, nobody knew what the other one was doing. So it created a mess of the whole thing. And it seemed like nobody was in charge. With you all, everybody knew what the other person was doing and you had the right people doing the right tasks.
It's amazing.
So anyway, I felt really good about that.
That's awesome. Garrett, anything to add into that part before we kind of go into wrapping this thing up?
I don't think so, but I think one thing, I guess the last little piece I'll add into this, which is what I say to a lot of people, is it's easy to look at somebody like Mike and go, it almost feels like he's always been that way. It's always been this structure. It's easy to be a brand new agent and walk in the office and look at somebody and be like, oh, that's his business. And Mike, what I want to say I appreciate so much about being able to go on this journey with you today is that it's hopefully showcasing exactly what I want people to see is that everybody's on their journey. Everybody is starting at some point in here. Some people may be halfway, and you're not even done. You're on your journey currently right now. You got bigger things that you want to accomplish and where you want to go. Take that assessment of yourself if you're listening to this, of like, where do I currently stand and where do I want to go, and realize like where you're at right now, Mike. I think if I look back at way early on, probably weren't able to write the picture and say, this is what this is going to look like in any way, shape, or form. But one thing you've been very good about over the years is constantly stopping and analyzing and saying, okay, do we go left or do we go right here? And we've had great conversations over the years of discussing the left or the right, and what are the wins and what are the downfalls, and then taking a path and you take action with it and you run. And you go that direction, and then we stop and we analyze of, did it work? Did it not? We have another crossroads here. And just would encourage anybody who's building their business with Ninja or anything out there, that's a really solid approach that will allow you to get to where you want to go. And hopefully you have somebody like Mike and I have had in our world to be able to bounce ideas off of and call BS on each other back and forth about whether we think we're right or wrong. And come somewhere halfway in the middle and go and take action. And Mike, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, because it's been an awesome journey.
Thanks, Garrett. You and I have, I mean, obviously a great rapport, but we have a really comfortable and valuable ability to test ideas and to do so in a, I don't know, I guess I'll call it a safe environment. I know that I can say, I'm not sure I believe that. and we could still come back around to, me being convinced, or typically me just understanding that you meant something different than I thought you did. But as I've done a few times in this call, may I talk about something else?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned, Garrett, something in what you just said about, making decisions and running with it and then going back and taking a look. I've been thinking a lot lately about decision-making and about how at the highest level of any business, I think, is somebody who is called upon to make a ton of decisions. We just have to decide. It's, as we talked about earlier, it's throw me the ball, right? Okay, I can make this decision. And a few things to say about that, but one of the things that I've done over the past few years that I think has been really helpful is to figure out how to hear my gut, to figure out what noise was getting in the way of me really knowing what my gut was telling me. I mean, I distinctly remember thoughts like, well, what if my gut doesn't know? What if my gut says it's not sure? And one of the things that I'm thankful for, having occurred is that I've figured out how to peel away all the layers of noise so that, I know what my gut's telling me to do. I think that's pretty critical. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that or has struggled with it, but I think that's super important. Makes me think of, I think it's Daniel Kahneman, and thinking fast and slow about, number one, making sure that, you think about, is this a decision that's critical or not? Should I just make it quickly and deal with whatever consequences? Or is this one of the few decisions that I slow down and I focus on? I'm again thinking about Greg McKeown, who in the reduction of noise discussions of late talks about your gut. I think this is fascinating. Your gut doesn't always tell you what to do, but it will often tell you what not to do. We should be thankful for that and take that, that just, hey, stop, don't do that is enough. So anyway, we've all probably got those when if we review the tape where we think, yeah, if all I had done was just not that, I'd be better.
The situation would be different.
I'd be better off. Yeah.
I love that.
I'd be better off. So anyway, I felt like I wanted to get that out.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Also, may I talk about coaching in general?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is like kind of like, as we, what are the things that you would say to somebody who's considering coaching? What are the things that you've gotten out of it? And what are the important parts of having that relationship that you want to make sure we highlight before we end?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and I didn't say it this clearly when we spoke about it before, Matt, was like, just because you want to hire a coach doesn't mean you're broken, right? This is not a bad thing. This is not anything to be shameful about or shy about. And for whatever reason, I think early on, I thought about it as, yeah, man, I really need some help here. Like, what's my problem? And then fast forward 17 years and, you pay more attention and you realize that pretty much every executive has a coach or a mentor in some form. And anyway, I think it's really important to think about that and think that, these people are sounding boards. And I think, as I think I said earlier, I mean, you want to pick the right one. You want to pick somebody that, that is an obvious attendee at your wedding. Otherwise, I don't know, can you be that comfortable? Can you be that close with them so that, can you really share if you don't have that closer relationship?
That's a good point. And you had mentioned to me on the phone too, the long arc, right? And the consistency. So just share a little bit about that I know it kind of connects with where we started at the beginning of like performance versus like leaning into this, all the aspects of what's going on in life. But talk about the consistency real quick as well.
Obviously, if we care about our business is, think about it this way. Like, I'm not hiring a bookkeeper for only 3 months a year. And I would argue that coaching is far more critical than bookkeeping. But, I'm hiring a bookkeeper for the entirety of the year. And, it is a system that I can rely upon that these certain things happen. Similarly with coaching, if you just build it, into your business model, that you've got that sounding board, that you've got that feedback, that you've got that accountability, and you end up getting value outside of the call, right? I mean, I don't know how many times a week I think, oh yeah, I wonder what Garrett will think about this, or I told Garrett I would do this, so I need to do this. Even just in the evening before or the morning of one's call, thinking, oh yeah, right, I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z. You get value out of that, even if you never had the phone call.
It's a great point. So Garrett, anything that you'd like to add before we close this out? This has been amazing conversation, by the way.
Yeah, no, I really feel like, again, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, and there's probably a lot more we can talk about. And Mike and I were joking as we kind of got into this call of like, we could go down some funny personal stories and things like that, but we really felt that for the value of the listeners out there that they didn't need to hear us running around downtown Seattle together years ago. I do think, and I just want to resonate with one last thing, which is I always tell people, finding the right coach is probably the most critical thing you can do. And just because I've coached Mike doesn't mean I'm the right coach for everybody, because we've had success. That person that you find that you can really resonate with is probably one of the most important factors that you can have. It's like being in any type of relationship with anybody, and you need to respect each other. You need to be open to communication and learning from each other. And it's mutual. It goes both ways in the coaching relationship. And that's what I think made it work for us, Mike, so well. And any of the people that I coach is that we've been able to develop that relationship. And any of our coaches, even for you, Matt, I mean, 100%, like you've experienced it, that
yeah, absolutely.
When you can get into that type of trust and relationship level with your coach, anything is possible. You guys can go create anything you want. And Mike, I just appreciate that we've been able to have that relationship over all these years, and been super fun. And I think it's overlooked how important it is. So thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you. I've obviously enjoyed it and keep coming back for more. So thank you.
Every week. I talk to Mike every week.
Incredible, man. Well, Mike, thanks so much for hanging out with us, sharing all this, and spending, your quality time with us this morning as we watched the sunrise in Seattle there.
Oh yeah, you got it behind me.
Behind you. It's been wonderful. Michael Doyle with Windermere in Seattle. If, I'm sure some people might be reaching out.
Please.
But guys, join us in our podcast group too, because if you're listening to this, there's a video of this that is published in our Facebook group. If you just go to Facebook and look for the Ninja Selling Podcast, you can join that group and you can see this entire interview if you're listening to it now. And Mike's in there. Obviously, Garrett and I are in there. So check that out. Mike, thanks again so much. And Garrett, thank you as well, man, for putting this together. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yes. Thank you both.
Well, I appreciate you hosting it, man, because I knew we'd get stuck in the weeds if it was just Mike and I goofing around. We
totally. Yeah. I don't know how many times Matt pulled this out, but at least 20.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you both.
Thanks to the listeners for sticking with us. I hope that you guys have a great day. And if you want to learn more about ninja selling, head over to ninjaselling.com. And if you're looking for a coach, up at the top there's a little coaching button. You can click on that to find personal coaching and reach out so that we can connect you with a great coach who you would want to invite to your wedding as well. So guys, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everyone. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, visit us at theninjasellingpodcast.com.
There you will also find links for more information about ninja selling and coaching. Have an incredible day.